それでは、私の友達たち、よくそ。お、私の日本のパイプを見てください。じゃあ、うん。お、すごいですね。Cool. Yeah. Sorry for bearing with my terrible Japanese. Uh, I've got some things I really wanted to share. This has been a long time for me to kind of put this all together, but so I'm a tea lover. I want to include some other things other than just pipes, but I don't know. I've just really wanted to talk about these for a really long time. So I'll get some close-ups. But what I have for you today, um, probably the one you're most interested in, is my tsuge. I feel like I don't hear folks talk about tsuges very often. We'll touch on this and I'll give you a closer look in a second. But yeah, that's my tsuge. I only have one. I would like to get more, but if you know anything about tsuges, they range anywhere from around $400 to several $1,000s. So this one is kind of a treat for me. But I also have for you a very special, very near and dear tea to me. I have some here that I'll show you in a moment. That is a Japanese green tea, commonly referred to as Gyokoro. And then I also have a kyusu here, which is a traditional Japanese tea brewing vessel. Um, I like this because I think sort of the likeness is a little uncanny. It's always surprising to me when I hear folks who do smoke a pipe and don't also enjoy tea. You can collect kyusu as easily as you can pipes, and the story and history behind kyusu is very similar to pipes. You know, these are typically made of very porous clay. You typically only want to use one type of tea per kyusu. This is my favorite kyusu, and probably my most used. They are quite delicate, and they are, these are handcrafted pieces. I have a document somewhere with the provenance of this particular kyusu, but there are only two schools in Japan that still make, traditional kyusu, and this is from one of them, from a master artisan, and it is, it's not just a hobby you can pick up and say you sell pipes, sort of thing. You could do that, of course, but these command actual living wages for these types of things if you're one person who can do that. So let's dive in, and I'll show you each of these, and then I'll actually brew some of this tea so we can get a look at what it looks like. All right. So I turned a light on so we could see a little better. So this is my tsuge. The shape is a cherry wood. It is briar, so if you're unfamiliar, cherry wood refers to I guess you would call that the poker style with the base built in, but the cherry wood has it at an offset so that the pipe doesn't sit flat. It stands with a check mark kind of semblance. It is sandblasted. The thing I love, I think, the most about the sandblasting is not only just the texture is incredible, but every inch of it is sandblasted. The whole lip, all the way down, there's no just smoothed over surface. Every inch of it has sandblasting, even the bottom, which I think is pretty neat. You of course have your label there, Tsuge Tokyo. This is a Tokyo branch. They have a couple different manufacturers, 500 and I think that says 53, and then the Tsuge Dragon emblem on the bottom. It is a bamboo shank. One thing I thought was really neat too is you can see this little lip, kind of the shadow that comes from this deep divot in the natural bamboo shape, but it extends down into the actual, I'm not sure what you call this. I would call that kind of the shank, but where past where this bamboo shank meets the actual pipe. I don't know, it looks like a stem extension. I'm not sure. Somebody tell me what that's called. But you can see how the curve of that goes all the way down. It's matched. The artist actually recreated that. I thought that was really fantastic. I love this bamboo feature. That's not a genuinely Japanese thing. You'll find a lot of English pipes, particularly, that also have that. Straight, I went with straight. I liked the straight better than bent. I have so many bent pipes that I just really wanted something straight. When I ordered this, other neat thing is the little Japanese sun. Not the rising sun. Don't get that confused. Yeah, so that little Japanese sun there, I love that. I think that is so cool. I adore this pipe. It is so light and so delicate, and it is so everything other than what all of my other pipes are. I do have a church warden that's kind of dainty and delicate also, but most of my pipes are author shapes or brandies or apples with big long bents, stems, wide stems. This I just thought was so delicate and so clean and so very Japanese. I adore this. The bowl is also huge. I know it doesn't look like it, but that is so deep. This outlasts even my 320 KS pipes, just in terms of how much I can actually fit in there. It is narrow though, but I think that helps. You get that chimney effect where you can smoke a lot, but you're only pulling so much air through a lot of tobacco, so you get that really concentrated flavor and stuff. I love this thing. Okay, so let's move on to the tea then. So, this tea is Gyokuro. This is a very high grade green tea. From my understanding, it's only grown in a few regions, and it's almost always grown in oceanfront areas. The manufacturing process varies from different manufacturers, but the principle that makes Gyokuro is that it is very early tea buds, so they're not buds, but they aren't fully grown leaves, which is somewhat common. But they're air steamed, so they're processed only with steam. And a lot of times when you see these manufacturers, I've watched some documentaries on like walkthroughs and tours of some of the manufacturers. I've of course never been to Japan myself. I would love to, but someday. But a lot of them even use like the original manufacturing. Tradition is a big thing in lots of countries, but for this particular style of tea, the tradition of growing Gyokuro is so old and so set in its ways that many of them still use and highly prize the original machines that were used to steam these. So you'll see these tours and you'll see this device from the 20s and 30s that's still pumping hot air in these giant baskets, big column baskets. They just blow the tea around. I don't know. Halsey, maybe you've seen those TV shows where people try to win money. But yeah, so this is Gyokuro. Very fine, very green. The light in here is a little yellow, so it's kind of hard to see. But let me shake it for you a little bit. But it is so green, such a deep, deep green. Fun fact also, you may know a little bit about matcha tea. Matcha tea is the powdered green tea. So you'll notice sometimes there's two different variations of matcha. There's ceremonial matcha, and then there is culinary matcha. So culinary matcha is typically made from what's called sencha, which is another type of green tea, generally lower in quality than Gyokuro. It's processed with a little more heat, and it doesn't have quite the same light requirements and things. Open air, that's also another thing, that Gyokuro has to be processed in open air facilities, usually because the idea is it's supposed to absorb some of the sea breeze, which is also why it's grown in coastal areas. But never mind the fact that most areas in Japan are coastal because the interior is all mountains. Yeah, so culinary matcha is made from sencha, which is a cheaper table green tea, whereas ceremonial matcha is made typically from Gyokuro, which is why it commands such a higher price. A sencha tea nowadays might be in the $5 to $6 range for an ounce. I think that sounds about right, but I could be wrong. It's been a while since I bought some of this, but this is somewhere around probably 3 to 4 times that price. This is very expensive tea, and it really can vary depending on which plantation and manufacturer you actually get it from, where it's sourced, and so on and so forth. So that's Gyokuro. I actually don't have much to say about this Kyusu. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the documentation before I started this video, but I do have it. So the interesting thing about Kyusu the handle, that's unique, right? You don't see that very often. If you watch Japanese film, especially traditional, like just for example, Kurosawa film or something like that, you may see some samurai or some uncouth villager just grab the handle and just pour the hot tea right out of the spout into their mouth. I don't think you'd want to do that. You definitely could. But yeah, there's no strainer in here either. Part of the artistry to it is also just these delicate bits, right? That's very thin and hollow, actually. To get that to stay on there and to be finely made. This one, I love this grain pattern in the color. The artist's name is actually under here in kanji. I cannot read it, unfortunately. The spout, of course, behind the spout, I'll show you a look on the inside in a moment, but behind the spout there is just a built-in filter that's just baked right into the clay. But part of the artistry with these, of course, is just making the seal perfect. There's a very true craft and art to making that stem. But doesn't this just remind you of a pipe? Like, come on guys, we need to be buying Kyusu. Or don't, so that the prices don't go up and I can buy more. But yeah, so looking at the inside, you do have a spout there just for water pressure. But inside, very light, very small. This is about 4 ounces, I believe. Let me see if you can see the filter there. Yeah, you should be able to see it. Yeah. So when you clean it, after you've made it, you just rinse it out and dump it down the sink. But I've got some tea preloaded in there, and I've got some water here with me that I will pour. Gyokuro is a very delicate tea. Alright, let's put some hot water in here. It only takes around 30-40 seconds to brew. I usually get around 2 to 3 steepings out of this, so what I'll usually do is put water in it, wait 30 seconds, pour it out, immediately put additional water in, and I usually have 2 serving glasses with me to drink it. I'm just going to do one so you can see it, what the liquor actually looks like. Alright, so I usually don't use these glasses, but I think they're pretty. These are handcrafted glasses. Still got the little glass bubbles in there. I kind of love that. Air bubbles. But we'll use that so you can see. Another thing I forgot to mention, temperature for tea. It can vary by teas. The tisans, like herbal teas, can pretty much tolerate any temperature. But when you have a fine tea like this, absolutely do not use boiling water. If you have a setting on your teapot, just south of boiling, if you're using like a whistle top tea kettle or something, if it starts whistling, just let it sit for 10 minutes. And let it cool down a little bit. You will burn this very easily, and it becomes very bitter and acidic. And almost intolerable. It can actually make you sick if you drink too much of it. Me anyway, but I've heard the same from many others. The same goes for oversteeping it. If you want more flavor, do not use hot water and do not let it sit longer. Add more tea. That's the trick. Alright. You can see it's almost just like water. Just slightly, just ever so effervescently green. Yeah, you really should almost not even be able to tell. You will get some tea particulate in there. I actually think that's a good thing. I mean, if this was matcha, you would drink the whole thing anyway. But yeah, I wish I could tell you what this smells like. I can definitely tell you what it tastes like. The very first note I get is always marshmallow. And that's hard to explain, but it's not just sugar. I don't put sugar in these type of teas anyway. Just think of a marshmallow, not a toasted marshmallow, not a s'more. I'm talking about a marshmallow fresh out of the pack. It has this light, just weird sweetness to it. It's very hard to describe, but it is very different than sugar. And I think that's the first taste I immediately get with this. And then you get sort of this pop of fruit. Peach sometimes, peach sometimes apple. But it's very, very light and very delicate. I get peach more than anything. I usually peach, marshmallow. But then you get the green tea grass. I'm trying to think of like a smoke. If you're thinking of like think of the finest yellow Virginia mature Virginia you can think of that's bright and grassy and citrusy. Just as delicate and as fine as it could possibly be. Gyokuro truly is the king of teas. So I'm really happy to do this first, and I hope you find this really interesting. I use this teapot only for Gyokuro. No other tea enters this teapot. um, I don't think you have as much of a ghosting effect. The tea's only in there for 30 seconds, and then you rinse it out almost immediately after you've steeped it a few times. But this flavor is just so delicate and so fine, it would be absurd to adulterate that with literally any other flavor, so I try not to. But yeah, I hope this was interesting. I have lots of other teas to talk about, local tea purveyors that I would like to visit and talk to. Some of them are actually pretty famous in the area, and I've actually spoken to them personally on a couple of occasions, and I think they would be interested in maybe talking, even if briefly, just to wave and say hi. So yeah, this was really fun for me. I'm going to enjoy this, and then I'm going to steep it one more time. And then I might load up my Tsuge with some fine tobacco and enjoy the rest of my evening. You all do the same. Bye!